Hello and welcome to a video with me, Raindale. And today is the 8th episode of our Noob Corner series, and I just want to thank you guys because so far in this series, every time I publish a video, you guys ask for more questions and more things for me to do, so it's not very difficult to know which kind of content I want to make. So today, we'll be diving into stats, both what they do and how they stack, because I've been having questions about both of those. A preview for what's coming in the coming weeks in the series. Next week I'm planning on doing the ABCs of team building, and then in 2 weeks from now I'll be showing basics of how to set your AI to do what you want them to do in the first couple of turns. So AI management with abilities on and off. But for today it's about stats, so let's begin with what our stats do, because that's pretty important if we're going to be discussing this. And I'll just free up Soja's face here. She's much prettier than I am. So, the first stat that we're looking at is attack. Now, attack has a single role in the game, and it is increasing physical damage. There's not much else you get from that, but the higher it is, obviously, the more physical damage your unit will do. Then magic does the same as attack, but instead of increasing physical damage, increases magical damage. Mag also influences healing if your unit has some healing abilities, because they are scaled from magic. Then we have HP. HP is a resource. When it runs at 0, your unit is KO'd. Obviously, War Division does not have any kind of wound system, which means that as long as you have an HP of 1 and above, your unit performs at 100% efficiency. There is no penalty for being at 50% health or whatsoever. So as long as it's above 0, you're fine. Agility will determine two things. The first one is how often will your unit act. So there's a timer in game, but basically your unit will get turns more frequently depending on how much agility they have. The higher, the faster. It also increases evasion, but not by a lot. It's not the best stat to increase your unit's evasions. Then dexterity. Dexterity mainly influences crit rate and critical avoidance, and also to a minor degree accuracy. It does provide some accuracy, but not as much as luck. And I will link in the description below a post on wardivision.info which really explains the role of dexterity and luck in the accuracy and evasion calculations. So if you want to dig deeper into that topic, I recommend you go and read that. It's fairly complicated though, so I don't want to get into that in this video. This one is more of a high-level video. So afterwards, luck, is really for accuracy and evasion. So sometimes you'll get a miss on a Kane, for example, who's not a character with evasion anywhere in his kit, but his luck is really high, so that gives him a little bit more evasion than most characters. And the same goes, the higher luck you have, the higher your hit chance compared to others are, because it also increases your accuracy. Now, I do want to point out, as I've explained in the damage formula video that I've released last week, depending on the class your unit has, their abilities from every single class will use agility, dexterity, and luck in their calculations as well. So they don't only depend on attack and mag, but these are used to a lesser degree. So attack will be used at 100%, with some classes, for example Ranger, use a little bit of dexterity in their calculations. So dex is also applied to damage for them. So again, I'll link something in the description where you can take a look at that if you're interested to know more about the role of those stats in the damage formulas. The final stat that we're looking at is defense and spirit. Defense reduces incoming physical damage, and then spirit reduces incoming magical damage. You can take a look at the damage formula again that I covered last week if you want to know more about exactly how those come into account. Now, I'm talking about calculating total stats. So when you take a look at a unit and you view their total amount of attack, what's included in what you're looking at? Well, it's a total of basically every single of those lines that are added. The first one will be the unit's base stats. So that's the stat that they gain from their level ups, from their job points, job levels, and then from their board. All of that is the unit's base stats. From there, you add stats from their master abilities and also from allies' master abilities. Some of them give, for example, Sakura provides extra HP for other light units, so that will also come into account in your total. Then you get stats from your Esper. If your resonance with the Esper that you have equipped is at 10, then you get all of their stats. Otherwise, it's 10% per point of resonance from 1 to 10. So usually you really want to use Espers for which you have maxed out that resonance. Then there is the stats from your equipment, but there is a stat stacking mechanic that I'm going to explain a little bit later in this video. But basically, if you have 2 or 3 items that provide HP, for example, you will take the full value from the highest one and then reduced value for the other items. So you usually want to split out what your items give you to gain more benefits. Then you have the stats from your vision card. That's the one that's equipped for the specific unit. You also gain the party abilities from the vision cards from everyone on your team, so that can lead to some extra stats as well. And then the addition of all that is the stats that you will see in the formation screen. I also did not mention, but any passives that you equip on your unit will be added to that as well. So if you're equipping, for example, self-sacrifice on Stern, you're going to have 60% more attack. It will be included in there as well. So that's what you'll see in the formation screen. But once you're in combat, there are 2 more things that can come into account and influence your stat even more. The first one is the bonus stats from unit affinity. So if you have high unit affinity with your other teammates, you're going to get all the way up to plus 20% agility, dexterity, and luck. If you want to know more about this, I've done a video about unit affinity in the past, you can go check that out. But these are extra stats that you can get. Then, any buff that are applied during combat will also be seen and be able to influence your total stats at any given point. And yeah, so that's it for total stats. Now, I mentioned equipment stat stacking. So basically, you have up to 3 pieces of gear that you can equip on your characters. And in between all the pieces of gear that you have, the one that provides the most of any given stat will always give 100% of the value that you see. But then if you equip a second piece that also has that stat, you get a portion of that value, and then the third, an even lower portion. So for example, I mentioned HP earlier, but if you had 3 pieces of gear that each gave you 1000 points of HP, well, you would get 1000 from the first, 500 from the second, and 300 from the third, which would lead to a total of 1800 HP instead of the 3000 that you see if you add every single one of your pieces of equipment. And for most stats, the scaling is 100, then 50%, then 30%. But for defense and spirit, it's actually really low. You only get 20% of the defense or spirit score for the second item and 10% for the third. So if you ever want to try to stack 3 armors on your characters, you really don't gain much benefit from that, and I would not recommend that you do it. The other stats that have lower progress are evasion, where you get 30%, then 20%, and agility, which you get 40%, then 30%. So those are not stats that it's really worth it to have many pieces of equipment that will give you more, because you just get such low diminishing returns on your pieces of equipment. And then the final point that I want to say is bonus stats, right? Whenever you see an increase to stats that is in percentage, it's not applied to your unit's total stats. So if you are Stern, again, and you have 1000 points of attack for some reason, and you equip Stern with his self-sacrifice passive, well, he's not going to gain 600 more attack to a total of 1600. He's going to gain 60% of his base attack. And I'm not sure from the top of my head what is Turn's base attack, but it's going to be something around the lines of 100 or 170. I don't know. You're not going to get as much as because your base attack is just one of the steps in calculating the stats. But that's what is going to be influenced. And that is true for passives, but that's also true for any kind of percentage increase in the game. So if you're using Ifrit, which gives 50% more attack to your entire team, well, it's 50% more of their base attack. And it's also true in-game when you activate a buff. So if you use Medina's TMR, which gives an increase to attack and magic, well, again, this increase will not be the total stats your units have, but really just their base stat multiplied by whatever the value of the buff is. So keep that in mind. Buffs are very, very strong, but a buff like Store from the Monk job that increases your attack by 150% will not more than double your attack. It will increase your attack significantly, but only by 150% of your base attack. I think I've repeated myself enough, but yeah, I thought it would be important to mention that. So that was it about the way stats stack in general and what they do. We'll go into more details if you guys want to. Please feel free to ask any questions about it. If you feel like I haven't answered your question on those specific things, it'll be my pleasure to answer in the comments and try to be a little bit more clear. Thank you so much for watching. If you've enjoyed your time, please like and subscribe. It will make it more likely that you see these kind of videos in the future. And then, thanks again. Have a great rest of your day.